The time has come. The MLS season will kick off this weekend. We have some CONCACAF Champions Cup to wet your whistle before then, but it has been it feels like a much longer off season than we normally have, although people are starting to pick things up in earnest. It has been an off season that I've documented well here on the Soccer OG. Unlike any other, it has blown out a marketplace out of the water in years past, and we have a very exciting season to get into. And we will break it all down. My MLS preview here on the Soccer OG. Like and subscribe. Hit that like button. Smash it and leave a comment. Let's get to 5,000 subscribers. We're getting there close, so we need your help with that. And I know you're going to be along for the ride here for Major League Soccer. I'm going to give you the entire standings as best I can. We can't cover it all. We have 30 teams in MLS, but I'm going to break down my top 5 in the East, my top 5 in the West. I'm going to give you my MVP, the Golden Boot, the Newcomer and the Young Player of the Year. I'm not going to give you who I think is going to win it because that truly is folly. So much is going to change between now and then. We have a summer market, which I think is going to shift the league considerably. We have injured players coming back. I'm not trying to duck a prediction. Maybe I'll give one just as a bookmark. But I think things will change a lot. And that's why I do believe MLS sooner than later, probably around 2026, are going to move to the fall-spring calendar so they can align with Europe in particular, South America as well, so that they don't have to overpay for players, so that they can, fall in line when contracts expire. It makes a lot of sense financially and competition-wise for MLS to follow suit. I will say, before the summer market arrives, MLS teams will have played the majority of their games. So we have seen that in a winter market, teams overpaying for players, being aggressive with players. I think in years past they would have waited and said, we're going to pick things up in the summertime, and we will be a second half team. And I think a lot of teams will still do that. But you see some savvy teams getting after it, getting their team in place so that they can make an impact. And when the summer market rolls around, they have a team in place. I think you also have to look at players that came in on the back end of last season at the summer, and after a full preseason, how much of an impact they will have. That will tell the story of MLS of what teams will rise to the top here. So you have a lot of mechanisms in place to see who is going to be the best MLS teams. It makes this really interesting, but we're also, I think what we saw here at the beginning and the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025, teams getting after their wish list, getting their team in place. With the CONCACAF Champions Cup, there's 10 MLS teams in there. For the teams that advance, they could have 8 games in the first 4 weeks. That's a lot. That is a demanding schedule that we're not always accustomed to seeing for MLS teams. But some teams will get into that. So let us get into the specifics. And to reinforce my point, MLS had this graphic that I wanted to share about, the marketplace just in the winter and some of the players that will be competing for newcomers of the year, newcomers to watch. I mean, you have Eric Choupo-Moting at Red Bulls, Kevin Denke at Cincinnati, Emmanuel Latelat of Atlanta United, who was the record transfer. Denke was the previous record transfer. Chucky Lozano's coming in for San Diego, Jonathan Bamba, and Wilfred Zaha. And then there are several others, a ton of under-22s that could be guys that make an all-star, make a best 11. It's just an endless number of under-22s that you're going to have to keep tabs on. So there's a lot at work. If anyone can hit an MLS prediction, they deserve to be in the Soccer Hall of Fame. And I'm not going to claim to do it, and I'm going to offend some teams, I'm going to please some others, but I'm going to give it a shot here to see who I think. Now, I'm going to give you my top 5 in the East. These are the teams outside of the top 15. I have Columbus in 6th. Columbus is going to get a lot better. They sold Cucho Hernandez. They traded Christian Ramirez. Red Bulls 7th, improved, the team that represented the East in the MLS Cup. New York City FC, I expect them to look a lot different as they've just made a whopping transfer for Santi Rodriguez to Botafogo. Chicago Fire will be improved 9th, Montreal 10th, New England improved will be 11th, Nashville 12th, Philadelphia 13th, Toronto FC 14th, DC United 15th. I'm sorry. I like these teams at the bottom, but I don't know if I could put them ahead. The teams at the bottom have been active, but I don't think they're better than who I have ahead of them. But here we go. Number 5, Charlotte FC in the East could be the most improved team. They have put in these 2 years of work so that this season they could have a team that could really complicate some things for their opponents in the East. They have the best goalkeeper. They have the goalkeeper of the year, and Christian Kalina. They have Tim Ream, a spirited defender. They bring in Eric Williamson, and then they bring in Wilfried Zaha, who will team up with Patrick Agyemang. So very well supported. I don't think they'll finish higher than 5th. They could go down a spot or 2, but this is a team I expect to win a playoff series, and they almost did last season, and make a huge improvement in points and maybe set the table to be a team in 2026. I like Charlotte FC a lot. Looking forward to getting out there on MLS Season Pass duty. Number 4, Orlando City. The team that should have made MLS Cup stubbed their toe against the Red Bulls in the Eastern Conference Final. They lose Facu Torres, another great success story. So many players leaving, but we've recouped so many more. Facu Torres is now at Palmeiras. Was it Palmeiras? He's in Brazilian football. But now that opens the door for Martin Ojeda to take the reins of this team. Ojeda is going to be the playmaker and the straw that stirs the drink. They have brought in Marco Pasalic, who will be out wide. A big money transfer, Nicolas Rodriguez as well, and Edward Atuesta, whose loan ended with LAFC, and he will slot into the midfield, maybe take some set pieces as well for Orlando City. Got a good defense with Robin Janssen and Pedro Galese, and despite Facu Torres, I think they could be better than a season ago. I don't think they'll get there, but I like this team and the moves that they made. The key is Ojeda. He needs to push them to another level. He has underperformed. He's been inconsistent, but you've seen those glimmers as well. Number 3, FC Cincinnati. Didn't expect them to be this high when we heard Lucho Acosta wanted out. Lucho Acosta transferred over to FC Dallas, and immediately we can make it official. The Evander transfer, $12 million to Portland, has gone through. So Evander will team up with Kevin Denke, this record transfer signing. I want to say something about Denke and Emmanuel Latelat, who's at Atlanta. These are 2 players that could have signed for really good Premier League teams. They were in demand, or top 30 teams in the world, Champions League type teams, I believe, or at Latelat anywhere in the Premier League. Remember, Morgan Rogers was the guy that preceded him at Middlesbrough, and he's a rock star at Aston Villa now. So these are high-end prospects. I mean, they may not pan out. They may not like MLS, but these are high-end prospects. Denke is going to take some time to get used to, but along with Evander, who I think is going to get a fresh idea of MLS, they will get cooking. And the good reason they'll have time, because with Matt Miazga and Miles Robinson and a really savvy defense, good fullbacks, they will be able to get points along the way, even if they don't score goals at first, but I think the goals will come before too long. So Cincinnati 3rd. Atlanta United's going to be the high riser in the East. As we mentioned, they've brought in Latelat, Alexei Miranchuk. He is one of those players that had a full preseason. Miguel Almiron is back. You know he can be a great provider and contributor in MLS. And Mateusz Klich. So they said they were going to have a big market, and they did. And I think Atlanta, who looked good at the end of the season, the playoffs, make a huge push and are a legit MLS Cup contender. Number 1 has to be Inter Miami. I think they'll have a great regular season. I still think playoffs are going to be a challenge for them, but we will worry about that when we get to it. Messi, Suarez, Jordi Alba, Busquets, a lot of other players that have come through, a lot of guys that got on the back end, and just look at what they added. Diego Gomez is now at Brighton. Big success for the Paraguayan and money into the coffers for Inter Miami. Telasco Segovia has looked good in the preseason. Fafa Picault, Maximiliano Falcon, Gonzalo Lujan. They hit South America hard. Tadeo Allende. They got a lot of players they'll have depth. David Martinez, who's a guy who got at the back end, I expect him to be a big contributor too. Inter Miami will finish the regular season first. The question is, a question for another time, is can they get over the top and make it to MLS Cup and win it? They will have a very good shot. The East is going to be better than the West, at least at the top, I believe. So it'll be tough for Inter Miami. In the West, here are the teams 6 through 15 that didn't make my top 5. Portland Timbers, I think, are going to be better, even though they lost to Vander at 6. Houston Dynamo still have a good system. Did lose Coco Carrasquilla and a couple others. Still going to be a pretty good team there, down there in South Texas. St. Louis, I think, will make strides in 8th with players that joined the club at the back end of last season. Olaf Melberg, the new coach. I'm excited about that. San Jose will slip into the playoffs after being the worst team in MLS, with Chicho Arango, Joseph Martinez, and others into that squad. Very exciting to see what is happening at San Jose. They needed to raise their standards so they don't lose track for all the other California teams. Real Salt Lake will finish 10th. They'll take a step back with Chicho Arango and a couples. I expect them to get better after the summer. Rapids take a drop. They go to 11th. Good team, but didn't add enough. This is a really good 11th place team. FC Dallas were really the most active team in MLS. Mostly departures, but they picked it up with arrivals. If you look at their transfer list, it is endless. And then they get their big ticket item with Lucho Acosta and a few other players. I think Dallas was really good for 12th. I just didn't know where else to put them. I wanted to put San Diego FC higher. I just don't know where, and they're an expansion team. I think they'll take their lumps, but Irving Lozano will have some nice moments with Luca De La Torre and others. They're already filling out their DP slots. Vancouver 14th and Sporting Kansas City 15th. To the teams I'm putting at the bottom, I'm just saying I don't know where to put you. I like your teams. There are just teams that did more and are better at the top. Let's take a look at the top 5 in my West. Austin FC, who are extremely active. They just got a new coach in Nico Estevez. They did a complete 180, pushing some players out. Sebastian Vriussi at the top of that list, getting a big transfer from River Plate for him. Mirto Usuni comes over from Spanish football, is going to score a lot of goals. So will Brandon Vasquez. Osman Bukhari, another player who needed a preseason. He's going to be much improved. Nicolas Dubersaski, young Argentine player they'll be patient with. Very exciting additions. Austin's going to be on a rocket ship, and I still think there are ways, but that fan base is going to be energized because of what the foundation, Rodo Borrell and Estevez were able to do. Seattle Sounders, I wanted to put them higher. I'm very fond of what they've been able to do, and they have their homegrown and their Tacoma Defiance pipeline, which will always provide a spark as it did last season as they made the Western Conference Finals. They traded for Paul Arriola, Jesus Ferreira. That's going to be provide a lot with Jordan Morris. Albert Rusnak's going to start off injured. That's bad news. But Pedro de la Vega is a guy that I've heard from everyone in Seattle has looked amazing in preseason and is ready to take that next step. So, I mean, he's a guy that I didn't expect to mention. You know, expected to be Ferreira, Morris, Arriola, and others. And Pedro de la Vega, along with those nice wingers that they were able to lean into, Seattle 4th with a chance to get much higher. Minnesota United, I just like what this team has done. Where, remember, they didn't have a general manager and they had like a couple coaches before Eric Ramsey settled in. They made the Western semifinals. They brought in, they're going to be a compact defensive team. And I think they're not going to be pretty to watch a lot, but Minnesota will be able to get results. They got Owen Jean, forgive me if I said his name incorrectly, defensive midfielder, Nicolas Romero, a center back. So they have those guys that can really squeeze a game. And they have the team from those attacking pieces from a season ago that should be able to get them the points that they need. So I think Minnesota look to take a big jump, certainly in the standings in the West. Number 2, LAFC, still a work in progress. We saw a lot of turnover, but you have to be impressed about the job that John Thorrington, Steve Cherundolo were able to fill with Jeremy Ebobisse and Nicolas Tafare. Why can't I remember names all of a sudden? And Kosi Tafari. Igor Jesus will be up there for one of the newcomers of the year. He's going to be an everyday player, maybe one of their most important players. And then no Mateus Bogusz. They need Giroud to score goals. They'll get it out of Bouanga, and David Martinez, who could be that front runner for the best young player, needs to be a big, big force for this team. Hugo Lloris is going to be great. Had a great preseason, had a wonderful first season in MLS. LAFC is going to be there, and we'll see what they do in the summertime. I'm going to put the Galaxy first. I know they lost Joseph Paintsil, but Gabriel Peck, who teams are really pushing, but you can't get cheap to get Gabriel Peck. He is going to be there. Christian Ramirez was a good signing. The Galaxy added Lucas Sanabria, a very exciting under-22. Elijah Winder from USL. And Marco Reus gets a first full season. So I think the Galaxy just have enough, and they have the deep pockets of Philip Anschutz, which should help them on the back end of the season. Speaking of the Galaxy, Gabriel Peck is going to be my MVP. I think he is ready to become a global superstar. The Golden Boot, Denny Bouanga for LAFC. My newcomer will be Wilfred Zaha at Charlotte FC. My young player, under 22, Obed Vargas, who I didn't mention about Seattle, who I also think is going to have a huge year. I've been going on way too long, but watch the games. MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. There's so many different ways you can watch MLS now, so get into it. It's going to be an amazing season. Support your local team, support your local league, and like and subscribe to Soccer OG. Let's get to 5,000, and we'll continue with MLS, and we've got USMNT coming up in March. What a wonderful time for soccer in our country and Canada.